Hello drafters! In this video I will show you my step-by-step process of how to take a photo of a person and then convert it into an AI generated character which you can then 3D print like these ones I've done here. There's been a huge trend lately of people turning themselves into action figures by using ChatGPT or other AI generation tools. But I wanted to take it a step further and see if I could bring mine into the real world by 3D printing them. Through trial and error, I think I have figured out the perfect workflow for you to use as well, so let's get right into it. The first thing we need to get started is a clear image of your subject. All you need for this image is a waist or a headshot with good lighting, and then make sure you just save it to your computer. Then we go over to our first AI tool, which is ChatGPT, to create our character image. So let's jump over to that. Now you can use the free version of ChatGPT, and I think there is some limitations on how many images you can create maybe per day. I'm not sure what the limitations are because I'm using a paid subscription to ChatGPT. That way I don't have any of those limitations. So you want to start a new chat in ChatGPT and you want to enter this prompt, which you can either copy from the description in this video or just type it out yourself. And we also need to bring in our image. So you can do that a couple of ways. You can click on this plus button and go upload from computer, or you can simply just drag in the image. So this is the image I'm going to be using of myself, and I've just dragged that into ChatGPT. Now there's something you need to change in this prompt before you submit it, and that is the XXX. So first let's read through this prompt and I'll just break it down bit by bit for you so you know what's actually happening. So it says, transform this photo of something into a stylized 3D cartoon figure with a soft appearance. The character should have large, expressive eyes, a small nose, chubby cheeks, and a smooth, plastic-like skin, similar to a high-quality CGI animation or collectible figurine. Maintain a friendly and cheerful expression. Use simple, neat hair that matches the original style or suits the character look. Dress the figure in clothing similar to the picture. The pose should be natural and endearing, standing with the hands in the pocket or crossed arms. Use a plain white background with soft studio lighting. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's just telling ChatGPT to create a kind of animation, Pixar style figurine character. And there's one thing that you should change in this prompt, which is right at the beginning here, the something, because you need to give it maybe just a small description of what the image is actually of. And in my case, it's myself, but I'm just going to say the man. So transform this photo of the man into a stylized cartoon figure. Now I'll get into it in a moment on how you can customize this to create different looks and effects to your image. But what you'll do from here is then just submit. So you click on that submit button. It will start thinking and processing and generating your character image. Now it does take a couple of minutes, so just be patient. And while that's happening, let's talk about the prompt itself, because you can change things further. You can either continue the conversation of the image that it generates and make changes based on that, or you could start a new chat and just change things in that initial prompt to get a different look. I find if you continue the conversation too far, it can start adding things that weren't supposed to be there, and it can kind of cause a bit of a mess. So maybe you change a couple of times and then just start a new chat if it gets a bit too much. But for example, just go through this prompt and have a look at the different areas and see what you can change. For example, you might want to change it from a stylized cartoon figure to more of a statue-like appearance. I'll show you how you can do that after this image generates. You can change your clothing as well. So instead of saying dress the figure in clothing similar to the picture, you could say dress the person in a superhero costume. Instead of having a natural pose, you could say give it an angry expression, or you can just play around with it. One of the important things though is probably the end, which is use a plain white background. That is because when we go to transfer this image into a 3D model generator, it's best to have like just a white background so it can really separate the subject from the background. I think that image is created now, so let's have a quick look at it and see what it's done. And you can see it's done a pretty cool job. It's made a problem though where it's brought it in too close. So what we can say is just to move this back a bit, or you could probably say make sure the character fits the image without being cut off. So let's just modify this and say make sure the character is not cut off and fits in the frame of the image. So you can make modifications like that and just give it a moment. It will generate another image. Hopefully this time it fits. Or you could just start a new chat and try again. There we go, much better. It's now fit the character in the frame. And it's done that a couple of times to me, I'm not sure why, but you can talk to ChatGPT and tell it to make those changes. So let's start a new chat. Again, we bring in our image and then we can just copy and paste our prompt. We're going to change this to a photo of a man again. Instead of saying stylized cartoon figure with soft appearance, I'm going to say a low poly like appearance. This character should have large expressive eyes, that's all fine. Similar to high quality CGI or collectible figurine. I think that is all fine. So let's just see what happens if we send this. And image is finished. It hasn't quite done what I've wanted it to do. It has done it to the clothes and the hair, but it's kept the skin quite soft. And I think that's because of that original prompt saying smooth plastic-like skin. I think that's kind of confused it a little bit. So let's give it one more try here. And we're just going to say, change this to a low poly model style character. Let's just see what this does. I think this will push it to what I want it to do. Okay, that is better. It's messed with the eyes a little bit. It hasn't kept that kind of cartoon look to the eyes, but you could push that and try and get into the prompt or continuing the conversation, saying give it more stylized eyes or something and trying to push that back in. But I think that's fine for now. We're going to continue on to the next step. But first we need to save this image. So what you can do is click on the image to bring it up and just hit on save. That will save to your downloads or wherever you do that. Also go back to the previous chat because I want to save this one. All right, so we've created our action figure and now we're going to go to the next step, which is using an AI tool on MakerWorld to turn these images into 3D models that we can then 3D print. So let's jump over to that part. Now we move on to generating our 3D model from the image that we created from ChatGPT. And I tried a few AI tools here. I used Prompt AI, Meshy AI, and MakerWorld. So let's go through some of the results I got. First one was Meshy AI, and this is an image to 3D model tool. I haven't played with it much, but I had heard about it. And I uploaded this image of my cat that I had created in ChatGPT, and it did a decent job. I mean, at first glance, it looked pretty good. The coloring is a bit weird with the purples and the purple eye. The back of the model was pretty good, which is the main thing that these AI to 3D model tools can sometimes mess up because they can't see, they only get one perspective of the image. And so they're kind of guessing what's behind the image and creating the model around it. So it did a pretty good job here. There's a little bit in the neck that's a bit weird. And then up on the top of the ear, there's like some shadowing or something. And underneath the paws, it's got a little bit of the paw under here, but it's an okay job. So Meshy AI was kind of The next one was Prompt AI, and you can see here is the cat again, and it just didn't really do too well with the shading. It's not really picking it up well. It's too dark on the back, and I found a lot of the image to 3D models in Prompt AI it's not really good at the back of the model. It's a bit too dark, so it's something I need to play around with. There is one I did of my son, which is just nightmare fuel. That's a scary one. Prompt AI didn't do too well in this area, and which is a shame because Prompt AI and I kind of work a bit together, so hopefully they can improve this tool in the future. Now the last one was MakerWorld, and if you're not sure what MakerWorld is, well, it's part of the Bambu Lab ecosystem. Bambu Lab are a very well-known 3D printing company, and so they created MakerWorld, which is basically a 3D model repository. So there's heaps of 3D printable models here from different creators for all different stuff, but there are also some AI tools that we can use. So what you'll need to do first is to create an account, and you should get some credits, and I'll explain credits in a moment. From the MakerWorld main page, you'll want to go to the Maker Lab tab, and here there are a bunch of tools which I'll have to cover in future videos. So heads up, subscribe to the channel because I might get into more of this stuff later on, especially the AI tools. Down the bottom, you'll find in the experiment section, image to 3D model, and you just click on the try it button, and this will take us to the image to 3D AI tool. As you can see here, I have my cat, son, and my daughter already loaded in, and they were impressive results from this. So let's just have a look at the first one, which is the cat. This is my new cat, Simba. It shows you the original image. So this is what I pulled from ChatGPT. and then I brought it in and it created this 3D model, which is seriously impressive. Like if you look at the back of it, it's not got any weird shading glitches like Chrome AI has. It's actually surprisingly good results, like really good. I was seriously impressed, even to the point where it's added paws to the bottom of the feet. Like it's actually really looking at the image it has here and creating a model quite well. Now I have done some and they're not as good, but these are some successful ones and it wasn't hard to produce them. So again, we have a look at, this is the model of my son. So again, the image from ChatGPT is here, and this is what I got, my son holding some chicken nugs, and that is one of the prints I showed earlier in the video. And then of course the one of my daughter. This one I actually used ChatGPT to create that faceted low poly look, and then I brought that in and it's replicated that in the 3D model as well. Seriously impressive. Like when you look at the back of these models, like it's messed up a bit on the text, but that's fine. The pants also look back to front, but like the actual structure of the model is the hair and stuff. It's really, really good. I was seriously impressed. So anyway, let's get to the main attraction here, which is adding our images and creating models. So what you want to do is go to generate new model, and you can either click on that and go to the location of your photo, or you can just drag in the image that you're working with. So let's do our first one, and then you just click on generate. And this shouldn't take too long. There doesn't seem to be too many people using this, or there never seems to be a really long queue. So in general, it'll probably take about 3-4 minutes. So just sit back, relax, and we'll be back when this is done. All right, and the model is complete and it's done a pretty good job. Once again, I think it's done pretty good. Eyes are a little bit weird, but when we go to 3D print this, it's not going to get that color, at least in this video. I'm just going to use a single filament. But you could always take this model, export it, and touch it up a bit and change anything you want as well, because you can get the mesh from this. But overall, I think that is pretty good. From the original image that we gave it to actually creating a model, not bad. Let's do one more. So we'll do the faceted version. So this is the low poly version, and I'll print both of these out and I'll do this in the marble filament. All right, model is done, and again, pretty impressive results. Looking around the back, it's done it really well. There's no shading glitches or anything. Eyes are a little bit weird, but I suppose that's to be expected from this particular low poly model, but overall, impressive stuff. All right, so the next step, we've got our 3D models. We now need to export these and get them ready for 3D printing. So as you can see, there's an export button up in the top right-hand corner. You click on that. It will do a quick little progress thing. You need to wait just a couple of minutes for it to get the export ready, and then you'll get to this screen about using credits. And I'll explain the credit system in a little bit, but I think because this is in a beta stage, you can see the cost of generation is normally 10 and it is currently down to 2. So I think that's because it's in a beta phase. Maybe when it goes into public release, which it is available for the public, but it's just in their experimental part of the site. I think that once that goes out of experimental, it'll probably be the full cost. But you can get credits, and the credits in the MakerWorld system are pretty easy to get, and you don't actually have to pay money for them in most cases. So let me explain that in a moment. But first, you just go to confirm. And it will say some stuff about saying your model is ready and you can download it in an OBJ format. So it's going to come with all the color details as well. And we'll say okay, and we'll download that. And we'll also want to do that for our other model as well. So let me just fast forward through this process. I'll export the model and then I'll explain the credit system in MakerWorld. Okay, that's done. I've got the exports of both of my 3D models. Now in MakerWorld, you have a credit system, and you get credits for just basically interacting with the platform. So you can get it for creating a profile and going through a few steps. You can get it for uploading models and people downloading them. So let me just show you. If you go to the little credit icon over here and you click on that, when you're interacting with MakerWorld, you get points. You can get 20 points just for creating a profile and setting up an avatar, a bio, and personal data. Easy done. You can get points simply for creating models in MakerWorld. So there you go. I've already got 2 points there. They have a Academy of Reward system, so you can do a course on the Bambu Lab A1 Mini currently. It will go through like just basic how to use the printer and more advanced stuff. And once you complete that, you get 50 points. You can also get points for rating other 3D printable files, and of course for uploading your own files and for people downloading and printing that model. So there's heaps of ways. Obviously you can see I've got a few points here just from a couple of models I've got online, and you can transfer those points for other things. So if you go down to the point shop, you have things which we need here is the Maker Lab credits. You can get them in a pack of 10 or a pack of 100. So a pack of 10 credits is 1 point. So it's not much, considering you can get 20 points just for setting up an account. And currently in the experimental phase, the cost of exporting a model is only 2 credits. And that will later then probably increase to 10 credits, I think, as well. When you're making those models, just generating the model doesn't cost any points, if you notice that. It's only when you export the model that it actually costs you points. So you can keep generating all those models, and maybe that changes in the future, but currently you can just make as many models as you want. If it doesn't work, just delete it or make another one until you find one that works and then export that. So pretty easy system. Obviously it doesn't cost that much, basically nothing in a monetary sense, just a little bit of time and setting up a profile and you can be using it. I have 150 credits for the Maker Lab, I think just because they give every account that much maybe, but maybe start an account and let me know in the comment if you get 150 credits when you sign up as well, because I think it's either something that's been given out in the past for previous users or anyone that's creating an account gets that much. I'm not sure. All right, now we're on to second last step. We need to prepare this model for printing because the way these models stand, maybe if you print them out and stand them up, they're just going to topple over. So I like to add just a little base onto mine, and the way I do that, you can basically use any CAD application that you're familiar with. Personally, I like to use Blender. It's free, it's really hard to learn, but once you do learn it, it's very powerful and it's really good at dealing with mesh files. I find it's very lightweight when it works with those. So I'm going to fire up Blender, and if you don't have Blender, fine, do what you want or just print it out, see how you go. Otherwise, you might just want to follow this next step to create a little base for your model for it to sit on so it sits standing, or you might just want to skip this part and go straight to the 3D printing part. So stick around or jump ahead, up to you. All right, let's put some little stands on our models in Blender. So like I was saying, depending on the CAD package that you're using, you can put a little base on your figure so it can help stand upright better. I'm going to be using Blender in my case. This is not going to be a tutorial on how to use Blender, but I do suggest learning it because it is a really powerful free modeling software. So if you're new to Blender, you might want to just follow along with these steps. It might be a little quick, but see how you go. So the first thing I want to do in Blender, I've set up in my quick favorites the perspective. So I just want to turn off perspective and change it to orthographic. Then want to import my OBJ. I'm going to go to my downloads and I saved it here. So we're going to go this one, figure 1. And you can see it's quite large and it's come in at a weird angle. So I'm going to go to my front view, and obviously this is facing the wrong way. So I want to stand this upright so it's a bit easier to work with. So I want to rotate this on the, XY axis. And we'll say -90. Yep, that's right. I'm also going to move this up GZ and to lock that in up to here. Shift and middle mouse to drag around the view, mouse scroll to zoom in and out. I want to rotate this so it's facing me. So again, because I'm looking at the front view, I want this to be facing back at me. So again, R to rotate. I want to hit Z to rotate in the Z direction, and it looks like -90. And then you might want to use G to move this just into a good position. You can use XYZ to lock it into that plane. So locking it on the X, and I think that's probably on the center. And then you want to get flipped to a side view, so holding tilde, and we'll go to our left view, and that's looking pretty good, but I might just move that in the Y direction. Yep. So I'm just trying to get that as central as I can. We might even look from a top view and we can see that's pretty much where we want. Okay, the next thing is Shift A, and we want to add a mesh, and we're adding a cylinder. In the cylinder properties, we want to bump this up, so we'll probably go 60. That should be good. I think those details will be fine. We'll want to increase the size of this base, and so we hit S for scale. and we just drag our mouse out. If you hold shift, it will also slow down the rate at which it grows. So I want it just about the size of the shoes area, I think. And then we need to squash this down. So we, again, S and ZZ. So it's locked into that Z plane. And squashing it down. Okay, and we'll go into our left view. And we might hit both objects and just move this up a bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to just hit this one, G to move, Z for my direction. I kind of want it to be kind of set into the model because I don't want anything to be needing like supports in a tiny little space. So I can kind of sink it into that platform a little bit and it'll be fine. Let's say about there. Check the front view as well. I think that's pretty good. You can go further and make this base more pretty or put some text on it or whatever. In my case, maybe I just want to, holding tab, go to edit edge, and then holding alt and clicking on one of these to create a loop. And then I think it's Control B for bevel. Maybe it's just B for bevel. I can't remember. Right click for bevel? Bevel edge? It is Control B. Okay, so this is not the best bevel, but what we can do is click that. We can then probably go face and click that face and Z to move that up like that. And we'll go out of our object mesh, go back to our maybe front view, and I just want to bring that down a little bit again. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I might just scale that just slightly, Z, and then just back into a front view to check. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, the problem I had with this model is I made the base way too wide. So when the supports were coming up, it had to start from out here to get up to there. And so it had really steep angular tree supports coming in on this model, especially under here where I had to support, I had to like try and get around this base because I made that base so large. So that's why I think it's important to make the base as compact as you can so that those tree supports can come straight up to where they need to go. Another thing you could do is if you think you can get the balance right, just go into the mesh and just cut it flat at the feet so it's actually sitting flat on the floor instead of having a bit of a rounded bottom and then tipping over, so that you could possibly eliminate the need for a base. But I like the kind of base look. It looks like a little Dungeon and Dragon figurine. So that's our model done in Blender. You can apply the same thing, which I'll do in a moment, for my other one. So I'll probably import the model and then we can export these. So I'll just quickly fast forward through that part. Okay, there we go. I've imported the second model and I've just applied that rotation onto the base. The good thing is the models seem to come in very similar sizes, so the scale is very similar. And all we need to do is export these. So I'm going to hide my second model and just show my first model. And I'm going to select both of the models that I want to export, because you got to be careful here, because if you can easily export everything and you'll have two models intermeshing each other. So we go to export and I want to use an STL. So we go to STL. Selection only is what I need. I'm going to go down to my folder that I saved these into, and I'm going to call this me fig1 and export, and then I'm going to hide this one, do the second one, click both models, and again export as an STL, me fig2, selection only. This way it's only exporting what I've selected, and done. Alright, we're almost there. The next thing we do is set these models up for printing and 3D print them. And that's where I'm going to quickly segue to the sponsor of this video, which is PCBWay. And the reason why I want to segue to that sponsor is because maybe you don't have a 3D printer and you can't do this step. Well, PCBWay has you covered because they can do 3D printing, as well as many other things. They can do CNC machining, circuit board making, and of course 3D printing. But the cool thing is all you need to do is upload your model into their quoting system, select your materials and your service type. We could do this in PLA, we could resin print it, we can even metal print it. Yes, that's right, you can 3D print in metal with PCBWay. So thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video, and I highly encourage you, even if you have a 3D printer, you might want to check out their services because they can do some really cool stuff. So check out PCBWay.com for all your 3D printing, CNC, and circuit board making needs. All right, let's continue. Let's assume that you actually have 3D printers and jump into the next step. So fire up that slicer of your choice and let's get 3D printing. Now we are on the last part, which is 3D printing. So depending on your 3D printer and what slicing software you use, it's basically the same thing. There's really only two things we're going to be controlling here. That is the supports. We're probably going to use the tree supports and another feature which I'll get to, which will help smooth out the print and make it look the best it can. Now, if you're using any recent slicer, they probably all look pretty similar now. What I'm using in this case is the Bambu Lab printer. I have an A1 behind me and an X1C just over there. So I'm going to be using both of those for this printer. But I also have a Creality High combo just over here that I've been playing around with. You'll want to fire up your slicing software. In my case, because I'm using Bambu Lab printers, I'm going to be using the Bambu Studio software, but you could also be using Creality Print or Cura or Orca Slicer, anything like that. And the settings that we're going to change are probably all in the similar areas. The first thing we need to do is actually import our model. And in my case, I've got a PLA marble filament that I'm going to use because I want to use this on that kind of faceted, low poly looking model so that it kind of looks like a rock sculpture. So I've got that loaded in my A1 Mini, and you can either drag in your STL file into the print bed here. For some reason it doesn't work on mine, so I have to manually import my model every time, which is really frustrating. So the one I want is the figure 2, and I'm going to import that. And here we are. That's looking pretty cool. I like to scale this up a little bit because if you hit S for scale, you can see the size is approximately 83 millimeters tall. So it's probably about that big. So I like to bump this up. It depends on your model and your printer and stuff, but I'm just going to bump it up a little bit more. This one was also bumped up to 150%. So, it's about as big as my hand. So I'm going to go 150, which brings it up to about 125 millimeters tall. The next thing we want is to go to our supports, and we want to enable supports. By default, it is Tree Auto for Bambu Studio in the latest version, so that is what I want. Tree supports are going to probably be your best option for any sort of organic model because those trees can come up and just touch those areas that it needs to support, whereas a normal support is just going to be a block straight up and not really a good choice of support for these type of models. You may want to play with some other settings for the support, like support critical regions only. I like to leave that off in this case so it doesn't mess up. You may also want it to be only on the build plate, and you may also want to change something like using slim trees instead so you can save on some material. So let's try that. Let's go auto tree slim with the build plate only. And this is the result it's going to give me. It looks pretty good. I think this model will actually print pretty well. What you're looking for in this case is making sure none of these supports are going to interfere, but also that those supports where they touch, they're going to leave a bit of a coarser surface where they meet with the final model. So you want to keep that away from areas of the model that are going to be looked at directly. So in this case, obviously you're always going to be looking at the front of the model. So you don't want to be supporting your model like this and having all the spots because it's just going to cause a really rough surface on that. What we normally do in resin printing is we actually tilt it, and that way we can get all the supports on the back, but you can't really do that in FDM printing. You can, but like for example, if we go to prepare and we rotate this and sort of do more of a resin style supporting angle, and that way it can sort of sit on the back of the model and be harder to see any sort of imperfections in the model. But I have a feeling this is not going to print well on the base. It's just going to cause a mess and probably delaminate and ruin the print. So I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm actually pretty happy that it's just flat on the ground like that, and then the supports can go up. Now, one other thing is, I think, a really important feature. If you click on the model, it depends on the slicing software, but variable layer height is going to really make the difference in your final print. What variable layer height is doing is, obviously when you print thicker line types, like here I've got 0.2, we could actually change that to a 0.24 if we wanted to. Bigger layer heights mean faster printing, but lower quality. Then you can go the opposite direction. You can do very fine thinner layer heights, which are going to be higher quality, but significantly bump up the printing time. Or you can use adaptive layer height, which brings the best of both worlds. So what it's going to do, it's going to analyze the model, it's going to figure out where it can do thicker layers and increase the speed at its maximum for printing. But then in areas where it thinks it needs finer detail, like a lot of curving areas, it's going to use a thinner layer height to create that more gradual step and create a better finish. So let me just show you how to use it. At least in Bambu Studio's case, you can do it in here. So you can click on the model. Up here is variable layer height. Click on that. You have some adjustments, so a scale between quality and speed. We want to bring it probably down towards the quality side, so I'd say about 0.25. Smoothness we can just leave at 5. So we want to click on adaptive, and you'll see it creates this kind of layered structure, and these are all the different layer heights it's going to go through and use. And then we can just smooth that out as well, so this way it can sort of blend those layer transitions. Where you'll notice this the most is usually on the top of a model or any kind of curved surface. When you have a curved surface and they're thicker layers, you really get that stepping, and that's where you lose that quality. So adaptive layer is basically using thinner layers on those kind of surfaces to make it a nice smooth transition. And this will really help in these organic models. Make sure you put on the variable layer height, and then making sure our support is on and we can slice plate. So that is looking pretty good. The print time is 3.5 hours. The total filament isn't that much. It's only 50 grams. So I'm going to send that off to the printer now. And I have one more model. I'm going to print the other one as well on my X1C printer. So I can, this is what I like about Bambu Studio and the ecosystem so much, is it's so easy to use. I can go over to my device. I can change that to my X1C. Go back to prepare, change this to my X1 Carbon. I'm going to remove that model and I'm going to import my other model, which is the Fig 1. I need to scale this up a bit to 150%. All my settings are still the same, so the enable tree support and such is still there. I do need to, that's the A1 Mini starting up. I do need to synchronize the filaments to the X1C printer because I'm using 2 AMS systems. So I can go to override and synchronize now. That way it brings in all my different filaments. And in this case, I'm going to use a gold filament because I like gold. I think that's the gold one. And we will slice this one. So this one might be a little bit different in those supports because it is a different model. As you can see, it needs to support my hair flick a little bit just here. That should be fine. Again, similar filament use, only 50 grams, only an hour and 45. But that's because I haven't applied the variable layer height. So we need to do that. We need to smooth it. Well, we need to adaptive and then smooth, and then we can slice the plate again. It should bump up the print time now. So 2 hours, 20 minutes, not too bad. Okay, I'm going to send that over to the X1C and leave that to print, and I'll come back with the results on how those print as soon as they're done. So stick around for the final results. I hope this video hasn't been too long for you. I know it's quite a bit of a process, but I just wanted to try and detail this out as much as possible for anyone that's new to this space or anyone that might just learn something new. So stick around, we'll check out the final results and then I'll say goodbye. Like we saw in the slicing software, both prints took about 3 to 4 hours to completely print at this size. On the Bambu Lab A1 Mini, I printed the faceted model in a PLA marble. As you can see, it came out pretty well, except for maybe a little bit of artifacting. On the Bambu Lab X1C, I printed the other more organic model using a PLA silk. And this one seemed to appear much cleaner. Removing the tree supports on both models was quite easy, especially on the PLA silk. That seemed to come off really easy, and it left very clean results. I think the secret to take away from all this is that using that variable layer height tool really improves the surface finish quality. It's unfortunate on this PLA marble model that there was a bit of artifacting. It wasn't too bad, especially around the face. So there you have it. You have learned how to use AI tools to go through this whole process, from creating the character image from a photo to converting that character into a 3D model, and then of course 3D printing the final result. And honestly, I couldn't be happier with this process. That brings us to the end of the video. I hope you've learned something. To show your support, please consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching.